Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 258. Today's topic, Hallmark. Not just good at writing greeting cards, they're also great at writing fantasy. Enjoy.
With love. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Well, welcome back, as always. I'm romantically inclined Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And here to write more erotica, I am Michael Miller.
That will actually make sense when we get to the first point here of the episode.
So today you guys missed take one because we did the intro already, and I thought it was good, but Jeff's like, no, do it more like this. And he couldn't contain himself while I was doing
I'm actually
the
going to probably
intro.
leave my laughing in there.
Oh, leave it. I think it's funny. So if you guys heard him laughing, it's because he was like, he heard take one and then heard the difference between take one and take two, and it really, really hit him. So.
It sold me. I was sold.
Well, it was funny because you're like, do a more radio announcer. And I'm like, well, we're talking about Hallmark, so I should do the Hallmark voice. So that's like, thank you for tuning into the Hallmark Channel. Welcome to Lifetime. Would you say that this kind of also qualifies like Hallmark or Lifetime movies? No,
Lifetime, where they're sort of very overtly formula-esque. They break some of the themes. Some of the themes are different.
Okay. So the basic gist, guys, here was that we're going to talk about what you can learn from Hallmark movies.
Yeah, and really, too, the thing I've learned in watching lots of Hallmark movies is one of the few non-children's channels my wife allows me to watch in front of the baby, is that they're really actually romantic fantasy adventures. They really are. Now, some are more obvious than others, but you have all of the important elements. A little bit of magic. Typically, a hero's journey is happening to right some Christmas wrong. And sometimes there's actually overt magic in some of them where there's like a wizard character like Santa Claus shows up, or
the sagely old character who's actually some sort of magical deity, but just is like the wizened old character.
And in these, it's almost always Santa Claus when you actually have the actual wizened old character.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just like, Bob, the old store clerk, or...
Who happens to be wise.
Jimmy, the trusted, employee at the store they're trying to save, or...
Yeah, sometimes the magic's very sympathetic, I think. In most of them, it's usually very sympathetic where things just coincidentally happen. But the first thing I want to get off is most people who've watched them, I know a lot of people think they're really formulaic and cheesy, and I can't argue necessarily with someone who thinks they're very formulaic and cheesy. And these things are obviously like movie mill kind of stuff where they're just being churned out. But the thing is, formulas themselves aren't evil. And give you a hint, anything we call a genre is a formula being used. So if you're writing fantasy, you're doing a formula. You might not think about it the same. It might not be as overt, or you think it might not be as overt to other people. But if you hit a lot of the things with classic like token style races or magic, these are things that show up in fantasy all of the time because it's what people classify as fantasy. And where sometimes Hallmark movies could probably do a little bit more to blend stuff together so it's not so harshly formulaic. It's really just a choice they make to produce something that, to me is like they're really trying to make something very familiar, like visiting family. So it's like a holiday experience watching their movies because you kind of know what you are going into the second one or the third one or the 500th one. I have no idea how many movies they've made, but it's a lot, and if you don't think like the idea of romance is good, I was telling Michael going into this, I think it was last year, fantasy sold $520 million worth of books, which I think is really cool. Crime and mystery sold like $720 million. Erotica and romance, which are in one category, I'm not sure why. My Nana, I'm looking back at you, sold $1.44 billion worth of books. So, there's a reason why they're using this formula, and probably because it sells ornaments, I think.
Because it sells what?
Ornaments. Ornaments and cards. But they do a lot of product placement of their ornaments. And Balsam Hill trees recently, too.
I've caught that, yeah. I mean, going back to what you were saying about, formulaic and whatever, I have watched a ton of Hallmark movies, kind of begrudgingly, because it's not something that I would gravitate towards normally, because they're so formulaic as soon as they begin. If there's an evil person, if it's like sort of a secret which person is evil, like I immediately know, okay, that guy's the villain. She's going to get together with that dude, and at the end, this is what's going to happen.
Secret,
not usually, but I'm saying like before it's revealed. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of times I've walked in on my wife because my wife is a huge fan of these movies, and I immediately I know the whole story in like a scene, like a singular scene. It's like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen.
Well, there's always the cute meeting, which is very essential to all of these things. Which. The question is, which type of cute meeting, and, it's usually a drink being spilled on someone, or, a car accident seems to be popular.
Well, there's also the whole one where they already knew each other and they've now, I haven't seen you in 20 years, but like there's this extenuating circumstance that has brought us back together and it's nice to see you, or there's tension and then that tension has to be resolved or whatever. So, but,
and there's usually certain types of themes they like to hit going into these. And it's the same themes in every movie for Hallmark. It's family, community, and faith. And it might be faith in the season, it might be faith in a higher power, but it's always about faith and belief, because you have to believe in the power of Christmas. Like you have to believe that listening to Gandalf won't get you killed. Good luck, dwarves. So it kind of depends on who you are. I always thought in a way it'd be kind of funny to make like a villain version of a Hallmark Christmas movie, and it's the people who get spurned every year at Christmas to a Hallmark protagonist. It's like they keep getting involved with someone who ends up falling in love with someone else around Christmas time, and it's sort of they're like the villain in every Hallmark movie. All into one character. Just they were rejected all of those times, but two of those villains falling in love.
Oh, like they were the one that didn't get chosen by the main character.
The main character left.
Okay,
they were supposed to be with. But they probably done that because it would still be the same formula.
That sounds like something you'd see on Lifetime.
Yeah, it would be more of a Lifetime one, because Lifetime is less about community and family, and it's more about the two people falling in love. And so that path is sometimes a bit more, modern, in the way it happens, where Hallmark tradition is built into all three of those. And all Christmas movies kind of have the same theme. Some aren't romantic, but, it's about the power of Christmas, typically community and family. The romance is typically, you always get in a Hallmark movie. I'm sure in all your Lifetime movies as well too. I'm just not quite as
well. There's
and a lot of times in the
there's a lot of them that are like
romance is a very
anti-man.
Yeah.
They're almost anti-man. It's all this woman was a little like there's ones where like there was one that Sarah was watching not too long ago where like this guy left the town and the lead character and then became famous and then comes back to the town, to kind of re-establish his connection with his roots and his fans.
His domination.
And she was like totally upset with him, and it was very like you did this, and there was a lot of tension, But of course, by the end of the movie, it was resolved, whatever. But I was just, But I was like, I wouldn't buy that. Like, no way. Just like, okay, he's back, and suddenly everything's cool. I mean, it wasn't suddenly everything's cool, but only like a week.
It was
maybe a
movie
week
timing cool. Yeah.
Yeah. There was one we watched the other night that I think was a Hallmark one, where it was an absentee father who had. The movie didn't do good with its timeline because they kind of made it seem like he'd been gone for like decades, like he was never really around, and. Then he's there and he's talking about how it is still his house and that's his dog. And the dog only looks like 6, maybe 8. So I'm like, how long could this guy really not been around if his dog is still alive? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was weird. But
yeah, no, some of them have timeline issues. That's definitely true.
Well, it's more for me. It was more about the emotional aspect because he, it was only there for like, I don't know, maybe a week. And by the end of the movie, he'd, gotten back together with his wife and the daughters loved him again. And, one of the daughter was really vitriol at him in the beginning. Like she was really mad. Like she called him by his first name, didn't call him dad, and no one seemed to balk at that. Like that was customary. Like she always called him that,
They should call him Bob or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Pete, I think was his name.
Yeah. No, I think it's really kind of a cool idea, where things all seem to resolve out. I mean, and that's important in a Christmas movie. If that's the formula that you're going for, things have to resolve out in the positive every time. But the thing is, idea is it's kind of getting to know your formula.
Well, how do you feel about resolution? Because I always go back to It's a Wonderful Life, which everyone seems to think is a Christmas movie, and I stand by it is a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, no, it's a Twilight Zone episode. Yeah.
That movie is not a Christmas movie. And it's like, oh, It's a Wonderful Life. It has such a happy ending. It has such a happy ending because it ends in a happy moment. But the bad things have not finished resolved by the time the credits roll. Like, the bank was going to go under. He was about to be arrested.
And you really don't know if he isn't going to be arrested.
Yes, he's going to prison. He should be going to prison. It's Mary.
Well, he went to Washington instead.
It's Zuzu's pedals.
No. So his prison sentence was to serve out in Washington, which is, I think, typically how people get elected.
Well, yeah, and then he became the Manchurian Candidate. So it was good that he was in Washington to do that.
Yeah, no.
Actually, was it him in the Manchurian Candidate? I don't even know.
No, that was not him.
No.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was what I was thinking of.
Well, no, I know exactly what you were talking about. It's one of his
I do not think he was in the
roles.
Manchurian. I think that was a little bit later. No. I think it's important for the formula that things get resolved, or about the resolution. Sometimes I think they go over the top, where it's like, which they all in a way are over the top, but it's like. They'll have that moment where it's like, they kiss at the end, obviously, because all of the misunderstandings are taken care of. And then sometimes like they'll quickly go to the next year to show the wedding at Christmas time.
Right. Yeah.
Which might be a little too far, but I don't care. Not for the purposes of that genre. I think the resolution's good. You have to know that the evil bank isn't going to win, the evil corporation. Because there are certain things, and let's start getting into some of those now here. So one of the things I noticed is a lot of these movies are based off of A Christmas Carol, the rhythm of the story, or The Grinch. So there will be a Christmas Story character where it's usually a problem in the past. For one of the important characters is causing a problem for Christmas in the present, and it will be Christmas in the future is screwed up for everyone as well too because of this past event. And you kind of have to revisit all 3 areas, or you have to kind of visit all the areas in the movie. And sometimes it's very briefly, but they like to hit all 3 of those things where what would Christmas look like if, and what's the problem today, and what was the problem in the past. And when they get through all 3 of those things, they can have the resolution and move to the end of the movie. Or sometimes it's the Grinch where the person just dislikes Christmas for whatever reason. And a lot of times it's still a problem in the past. They love the problems in the past. Dead spouses or parents, typically 2 to 3 years ago.
There's tons of like this is my single mom or this is my single dad stories.
Lots of single.
Lots of those.
I've also noticed they love Jane Austen as well, especially Pride and Prejudice, where I haven't really seen the rhythm of the story used, but the character names come up a lot, and sort of the character ideas sometimes do within the names.
Well, is that
they love using Darcy? They love using boy, my brain is freezing on Pride and Prejudice names, but Darcy and I forget who the girl was. Wow, I love that movie and book, I guess.
Is that a case? But is that a case of a bunch of writers just deciding they want to do homage, or is that like people just not having original names?
I think it's probably more of an homage thing because a lot. I think
But you do think it's intentionally done to reference Pride and Prejudice?
I know it is because some of them do it really. It's like Darcy Corp, where there's a guy who's a billionaire who falls in love with the girl who happens to have the same name from the story. That kind of comes up, or there's an up-and-coming person whose name is Darcy who's trying to become the Darcy, and they get derailed in a different way or whatever. So it's definitely homage, and it's probably intentional because their audience probably likes Jane Austen, and especially Pride and Prejudice seems to come up a lot. There are oftentimes a big bad foe. It's usually big business, not always. Sometimes it's a family member, like a father. The big bad foe is not usually one of the two protagonists. Even though there's really only one protagonist, it's usually the female character. It's always a female character, but there's always a guy matched to her. But a lot of times there's a big bad foe where a company is trying to close something down or trying to end the Christmas tradition or whatever that has to be overcome. That's a common thing too. All of the characters, all of them are very obvious tropes. It's the best friend. It's the big bad boss. It is the girl or boy who lost their love for Christmas, who lost a loved one. Their characters are all formulas, and you can typically, if you've seen it before, and most of the ones here are very common tropes that you see. And like I said, Hallmark does not go to disguise them. That's the neat thing with watching Hallmark movies is it doesn't show you necessarily how you want to execute it, but if you really want to learn structure, it makes it so obvious that you can learn story structure really easy from Hallmark movies.
That I totally agree with.
Yeah.
I think I think that's one of the best things about
benefits
it.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit too, but the Odinic Wanderer, often shows up in here. So it's the Santa Claus character who either appears sympathetic magic or real obvious magic. Sometimes like I snap my fingers and presents fly out of my butt.
Good power to have.
I don't think I've actually seen them come out of the butt, but I've seen like fingers flipped and like Christmas Return. So that does happen, but not usually. Usually the Christmas savior falls onto the female lead. But sometimes Santa does the hard lifting at the end. But you have that kind of character who kind of pops in there. Sometimes the magic is high magic, and sometimes it's usually lower magic though. It's usually like hidden within an ornament and things. Just coincidentally, a lot of coincidental magic. Yeah.
Well, but it's also most of these are pretty much all of them are set in a modern reality. Modern Earth world. You're not talking like straight high fantasy. So putting high magic in is kind of tough. So usually it's just like there's a little.
I've only seen I think one or two where there's true what I would call high magic in, and it was literally at the North Pole. So it's in that pocket fantasy world of Earth.
There was one that we watched that was actually pretty good, but I don't know for sure if it was Hallmark or Lifetime. Thinking about it, it probably was Lifetime, but the basic gist was it was this girl who was going to get married to this guy, and she died. And she is now a ghost/angel, and she has to try to fix up this other woman with her fiance.
Angels a lot of times are where the high magic gets slipped in.
That's why I'm saying like this one would be like I would think that one would qualify as higher magic.
That one's
Definitely.
higher magic. There was another one I saw where it was a guy and a girl meant to fall in love, and an angel is sent, which actually was her grandfather, who died in World War II after essentially met his wife, got married, had a child. Before the child was born, shipped off to World War II, died.
Oh boy, and that did happen a lot.
Yep, and that when he first came back, he didn't realize. I don't think he realized it was her, but he came to realize that it was his granddaughter, and so he was pulling out all of the stops, and there's some a little bit bigger kinds of magic in there too. And going back to last episode, there are lots of magic artifacts that show up in definitely Hallmark movies. Ornaments, snow globes.
The snow globe.
I think there's actually a movie called The Snow Globe. One of the formulas is you have to get a Christmas theme in the name. Sometimes it's in the names of the characters. But you very definitely have to have as many Christmas-style names as possible in a Hallmark movie. A lot of times the girl's name is Holly or Eve.
Yes.
The guy's name is Chris. They're making Kringles in one of them, which was a Christmas food. So, I mean...
I was about to say, what is a Kringle? I don't think I know.
It was like a bread thing that a company was making, and the dad was the CEO of the company who loved the factory, but his son wanted to automate it when he took over the company. Dad sends son to town, meets the girl, hijinks follows, and realizes that the way it's done is correct because they make these Kringles, which everyone love, and you don't change the way it's done just to make more money, which is a very common lesson you learn in that scenario in Hallmark movies, which isn't necessarily a bad lesson, but it's a lesson you have to learn pretty much whenever there's a big business person in a movie. What are some other sort of really typical big city goes to small town?
That I was about, yeah, definitely.
Most Hallmark ones take place in small town. Not all of them, but most of them do.
And I think that's quite simply because it's so approachable. Most people don't. I mean, if you go, pound for pound, most people do live in towns versus cities. I mean, yes, there are huge cities with massive populations, but it doesn't have as many people as the rest of the state does or the rest of the region where it's all smaller towns.
Well, and you think about, it's, I want to say, I think there's 5,000 counties in the U.S. approximately. And I think there's around 500 that have urban population distribution. There might be a small city or something. I don't think those are counted, but there are very few counties that are super densely populated in the U.S. It's a relatively small percentage. I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me on that. So, I escaped that probably wrong number, but it's true. It's true. Let's see. Plus the season itself. Yeah. The season itself is magical.
Oh, yeah. It definitely opens up a possibility of things that cannot happen at other times during the year. One of the other tropes that's a big one is the businessman, whether it is the boss of the main character or whether it is the big bad evil corporate boss, always says, I'd like to get this wrapped up by before the holidays, or I'd like to get this wrapped up by Christmas.
You
or
have to work Christmas.
Close this deal.
Themes, right?
Yeah, that's a Christmas Carol. Yeah, but the whole bit of a thing, in the beginning of the movie, they'll be like, I need this wrapped up by Christmas, which lets the audience know, obviously, that the movie's going to be over by Christmas. We're starting now. Christmas is in a week or two, and boom, the movie will be over at that point.
And I don't want to say every Hallmark movie, but I would say 99% of them, there's always the period of misunderstanding that happens right near the end. The climax is always right near the end, and it's not necessarily on Christmas Eve, but the resolution is almost always on Christmas Day itself, not Christmas Eve. A lot of times, the breakdown happens on Christmas Eve, where it all falls together. You go, oh no, Christmas won't be saved for this movie. It's definitely doomed to this time. And lo and behold, one day later, it all works itself out. And which is something I think is very, very humorous about it. Because, it can't be the day before. It can't be the day after. And I'm not saying there aren't any movies where it is the Christmas Eve, like right near. I don't think so. I think all of them I've seen, I'm pretty sure the miracle happens on Christmas itself. And that's not necessarily true in all Christmas movies, because some of them it has to happen Christmas Eve so Christmas can happen. But in Hallmark movies, it always seems to be on Christmas Day. But there's something about the season itself where that's the only time the magic could happen. Let's see. Let's see what my note here is. If you do not work, okay.
If you don't worry if people know it is a formula, you can crank out the work so you'll have fun with it.
Yeah, so that's, I think, one of the lessons I've learned from the Hallmark movies is they don't care that it's a formula. They don't care that it's obviously a formula. That goes back to that idea I said very early on that the movie itself is like a familiar family member in your house. Mm-hmm. Because you know exactly what to expect when Uncle Hallmark, or we'll say Auntie Hallmark here.
Auntie Hallmark, yeah. That's better.
When Auntie Hallmark shows up on your TV screen, you know what is going to happen. She's not your drunk. She's your Christmas movie, and basically the pacing of it. You know that there's going to be the cute meeting. You know that there's going to be the misunderstanding, which almost rips Christmas apart for everyone, and then the resolution where Christmas is saved. And maybe for one person, the first time in many years of their life. I'm sorry.
And God bless us, everyone. Even you, grumpy old businessman.
Yeah. But pretty much whenever businesses evolved, just think to the Christmas Carol. And sometimes they're clever at how they deal with Christmas past. It's just conversational a lot of times. It's not necessarily spirits that show up, but it's like whenever the businessman shows up, they like to go into Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. All have to get dealt with. That's like a movie they borrow. That and The Grinch, I think, are the two big movies that they borrow off of, and they have a few other like romance style things that the other thing they'll do is they'll take the romance genre and they sprinkle it with Christmas to make Christmas integral to the romance happening. But I see, like, especially the better ones, it's the Christmas Carol or the Grinch sort of redone. And yeah. So give character and we talked about this a little bit, is very important. You have to have the Christmas names. That's just one of the tropes that has to happen. The Christmas names have to get sprinkled throughout the movie. It's like seasoning. It's like
Joseph, Chris, Mary, Eve, Holly. Ta-da,
ta-da, ta-da.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope everyone, this might be a stretch for some people, who listen to the show normally. This is obviously dropping right before Christmas, which is why we're talking about it. But really, I think the big takeaway is, though, realize that if you want to write fantasy or if you want to write science fiction, you're talking about a genre, which is a formula. So, and I so often hear people saying, oh, this has to be original. If you're writing original works, they're not genre based. They're not, they're fiction or nonfiction. And even then, I'd say there's probably still no new originality at this point anyway. It's about how you present it. And I'm a big believer, hey, it's a great idea to kind of come up with your own little twist to make it not feel so formulaic, but ultimately you're choosing a formula when you choose a genre. And, whether you're a game master or you're, you write or tell stories to people, embrace it. Make up your own formula, and you might only use it for a book, but think about it like you're making a math problem. You need A to go to B to go to C divided by D, and you get the resolution, or some other probably better formula than that.
And the other thing about it is, going back to what Jeff was saying at the beginning with the statistics of book sales and saying that romance and erotica is the highest selling, you think those aren't formulaic? Of course they are. Like all these Hallmark movies, tons of them are made every year. They all get watched. People enjoy them. Sure, they're formulaic, but people still enjoy them and still consume them en masse.
Yeah.
So
think about it more than
it's
the next
okay.
two combined.
Yeah, it's okay to be formulaic. People, they're again about approachability and comfort. When people have an idea of what to expect, like not everything has to be a curveball from left field and a big reveal. I mean, sure, we like that. But at the same time, there's definitely a comfort in knowing that this is a standard 3-act structure and that we can believe that the bad guy is the bad guy and we can root for the good guy because they're clearly the good guy. And I'm not saying that layered characters and having characters that are more gray is bad, because I love that too. But it's very approachable for people. I think one of the things with writers, and for those of us that do consume a great deal of fiction, is that because we've seen so many formulaic things, we chalk it up as bad. And when we do find more original writing or more original content, we gravitate towards it because it's more complicated and we haven't seen it before. When most people, and by most I'm comparing the people that are creating, i.e. you guys, the writers, content creators, versus the avatars like, myself and the tons of other people that are, watching movies, reading books, playing video games, and what have you. They are not looking at it the way we are. The difference is that because you are a creator and you see all the formulas and you're behind the curtain, you get bored with the formula. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people are totally fine with it being, even predictable. Like predictable is not necessary. Yeah. Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing at all. Because remember, when someone's going to get that new book, or they want to play a game, or they want to watch a movie, or whatever they're doing, when they're consuming, they don't think, I want an original story. They go, oh, I want something, a romantic comedy, or
I want something I'm going to enjoy, regardless of whether or not.
And they usually think about it in terms of genre, which is one of the reasons you thought to get into your genre writing. Don't embrace and understand it as a genre. Get to know your structure. Great ways to flesh it out and make it feel a little more complicated is through your subplots, right? Have subplots that are romance. And there's a reason why there's a romance in every major movie, because of that first money stat I was saying. That's why there's always romance mixed in, but you don't necessarily need that. It could be mystery. It could be a different thing. Use your subplots to start hitting some different rhythms in there. And if you can mesh it together, well, that's where you get something that feels not formulaic when it really probably is.
Well, I think we've nailed it.
Kapoom! We should have pointed to the fence at the beginning of this one because we knew it was going to go out of the park.
Yep. Well, it was a little formulaic and predictable, so.
All right. So for the world building task of the day, Michael.
Let me see here. Do you have one?
There's not one written down, but
go watch a bunch of Hallmark movies while there's still Hallmark Christmas movies while you still can, because you'll have to wait till next year if you miss them. Yeah. Actually, that's not true. You can actually watch a lot of them on Netflix now too. There's a bunch of movies that are clearly Hallmark originals that have made it onto Netflix and onto other streaming services.
And I believe they have their own streaming service at this point too. And then for your world builder task, there is something coming soon. Will be coming out early next year, and it will be world building based. And if you go to howtoworldbuild.com/soon, you'll be able to find out what that is a little faster. Anyone who's on that list before next year, before January 2nd, it will be revealed what it is. To everyone else, it will come later. So go ahead, go sign up now, and hopefully I'll see you for that on January 2nd. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.